Good morning or good evening, depending on where you're watching us from. My name is James Corbin. I'm the Vice President for Enrollment Management. I'd like to welcome you to this broadcast today. It will be saved so that if you want to go back and review it, it will remain on our YouTube page. So feel free to go back to it after time. We certainly wish you were on campus. Unfortunately, this day and age, right now, we're restricted from doing so, but we hope to open it up really soon. Your admissions counselors will certainly tell you all about that when we can make it happen. Many of you have sent in questions ahead of time. We have those, and we will try to address them within the time span we have. This is currently scheduled to go till 11:30. It may not take that long, but we'll certainly take the time. If your questions aren't answered by the time we get to the time we need to end, please make sure you're contacting your admissions counselor or sending that question to admissions@riversidemilitary.com, and we will certainly follow up with you directly. The panel will try to answer all questions that we have. Look, enrolling a child in a boarding school under any circumstance is a thing that requires a great deal of trust and confidence, even more so today with all that's going on. And one of the most important factors is the quality of the leadership, their ethics, their transparency, their decisiveness, and how they communicate. And Riverside is blessed to have some top quality leadership across this campus. It's obviously important, since that's what we do, is we train kids to be ethical leaders in college and in life. And we certainly do that here. So to that end, we've gotten some special folks here today to answer your questions that represent some of the leadership at the school. I will begin with our president and hand it off to him. His name's Colonel Stash Brzezinski. Sir.
Morning all. Greetings from Riverside. Whichever country, whichever state you're in, we're hoping you're having a blessed day and you're staying healthy in this rather challenging worldwide global pandemic. As he said, my name is Stash Brzezinski. I go by Stash. I hold a PhD in education and 2 masters in engineering, and also I hold a master's in strategic planning. I have well over 25 years of experience in education, spending 7 years as a university or college president, as well as a provost of a university and a chief financial officer of another. I spent 11 years at West Point, 26 years active in the U.S. Army Field Artillery. And I have 3 children, all of which are or have been serving in the United States military, all college graduates and spread out across the world. Joining me today on my right, your left, as you're looking at the screen, is Lieutenant Colonel Adam Carter. He has over 24 years of experience here on this campus. I've been associated with us at Riverside for about 5 years now, and a little over a year in the role of president. So I seek his advice frequently because he's seen it all over the years. Picture how we were 24 years ago and how the world was 24 years ago versus today. Actually, think about how the world was 3 months ago versus today. But he's the commandant of cadets, and he's responsible for about 3/4 of the day that cadets are awake, and all the time on the weekends as well. On my left, your right, is Dean Dr. Kathy Moore. Dr. Moore and I have worked together at Georgia Gwinnett College for, I guess, about 10 years or so, or a decade. I stole her from where she was the Dean of Education, and she has over 25 years experience as a dean and as a professor. I stole her from Brenau University, where she was a dean there, but she has trained teachers and taught teachers how to teach. And there are literally thousands of teachers across the state of Georgia and beyond who are performing superbly. She has many teachers of the year for their school or for their district that she has trained. And we're blessed that she retired. And then when she announced her retirement, I immediately made her an offer to please come here at Riverside Academy. She's a Gainesville resident. And so she took the opportunity, and we're blessed to have her working with our faculty. I think one of the more interesting things that she started this year is a master teacher program, so that sure that all the teachers that are here are brought up to speed as being the best that they can be and that we can find in order to educate your children. One of the things that people often ask me is, what's my responsibility as president? And I would say, first and foremost, my responsibility is not to educate your child, your son. My primary responsibility is to provide a safe, secure, and healthy environment in which that child can learn and feel comfortable as they continue their development into early adolescence through adolescence into young adulthood, and finally as they go off to college. So that's my primary mission: provide a safe, healthy, and secure environment, and then get the resources in place so that the commandant can do his character development and leader development aspects, and the dean can handle the intellectual, academic aspects of development without worry. If you're spending your time worrying about something, you're not spending your time learning and developing. So that's my primary role. I take that quite seriously, and I'll address that in some of the questions that are that you've proffered towards us. Any introductory comments from the dean?
Good morning. I'm delighted to be able to join in for this Q&A. We're excited about the idea of having your son come to Riverside Military Academy. We offer a rigorous curriculum that includes all of the core subjects, but also includes a nice array of electives such as foreign language, video production, music, art, drawing,
Drama.
Band. Well. Yes. And also PE. They do take PE as part of their curriculum. They also take military science as part of their curriculum. So it's a well-rounded experience for the cadets. They stay busy. They stay busy with their academics.
I might add, when you talked about video production, we have our own news network internal to the campus, and we're actually sitting in that studio as we speak right now. Colonel Carter, anything you want to add in general before we start getting into questions?
Yes, sir. As you said, I've got a couple decades under my belt here at the Academy. I'm a big fan of the military model of education, single gender education. I've seen it mature the potential in young men year after year. This model is proven for over 100 years since the Academy's been in existence. I'm just a big believer in the Academy itself and what we do.
So let me pick up on that for just a moment. The Academy has existed for over 100 years. It was founded in 1907. So if the question is, does this model work? If it didn't work, we wouldn't be around for over 100 years. Is it for everybody? No. About 15% or so who start at some point drop out of the equation because they are not suited for it, or they don't become acclimated to a military model of instruction, or they can't just get the grades just where they need to be to remain, because we are an accredited institution, and we do remain quite vigilant on ensuring that we maintain the standards that ultimately lead to approximately between 94 and 96% of all of our students upon graduation go off to college with millions of dollars. Last year, we raised $7 million, over $7 million in scholarships for colleges. And this year, we're on track to do a very similar amount as they go off. We also have programs that assist students in getting into the military academies: West Point, Annapolis, Air Force Academy, Coast Guard Academy, Merchant Marines, and so on. We also have programs through the Junior ROTC program that's on campus, that we have programs that help them and assist them in getting ROTC scholarships, which are usable anywhere across the country, not just in the Army program. Ours is an Army Junior ROTC, but these scholarships, we can assist them in getting Navy, Air Force, and Army ROTC scholarships as they go off to college. The other percentages that don't, about 5 or 6 cadets, or about 5%, because there's about 100 in a graduating class. 5 or 6% of those will go directly onto active duty at their own choosing, and they'll enlist in the service of their choice or the Guard, and then begin their career there. Many take that approach because they realize that you don't want to go to college and graduate with debt, so they go into one of the branches of the military and then take advantage of the GI Bill, which after they've served a couple of years on active duty, the military will pay for a 4-year undergraduate degree for them, and they'll have no debt then when they graduate college. So with that, I'll start by answering some of your questions. And please keep in mind, if you have questions as we go on through this briefing, go ahead and type them in. They're going to appear on this little screen before me. I'll take them as much as I can in the order. Some of them will be bundled because they're redundant questions. But the first one, and actually the first 4 or 5, deal with the issue of COVID-19. Let me say that words are cheap, and you're going to hear words from us today, but any words that you hear from us today, we can back up with evidence. We're not car salespeople here. I'm sorry if you're a car salesman out there that tells you that this car is going to last you forever. We'll tell you what we're telling you based on the facts that we have, the evidence that we have. One of those big facts is that we, in an abundance of safety, we closed this campus earlier than the public school systems closed, because we knew that if we just abruptly closed without some form of planning and time to transition to digital learning, which is different than just standard online learning, that we can make a bigger difference in the amount of quality of the education that the students would receive at home. And I'll turn to the dean in a moment as she'll talk about our academic program, its accreditation, and how digital learning differs from online learning that you'll normally find at the public schools. And in fact, many, many, many parents called me, wrote to me, and asked whether or not they have one child at Riverside and the other children in public school. They asked whether or not they can enroll their student while they're home into our digital program, because it was so far superior to the program that their other students at the public schools were having. They were saying that our students were locked to their screen and being instructed, and phones were ringing when the student moved away from the screen, whereas their other students were being given an assignment at the beginning of the week and they weren't contacted or held accountable to the end of the week. Our students have had a very busy time using what's called a Zoom platform, where we can actually observe them engaged in the classroom. So we closed early, transitioned to digital learning. However, we recognized we had a responsibility that many students here could not go home, either because their parents were not going to be available. They were healthcare workers who were going to be busy 7 days a week and couldn't supervise their child as they were in the hospital. There are heroes who are out there been treating COVID patients across the country. There were international students who could not get flights out of the country, or whose country was not allowing people back in because of the viral threats. So we kept those students here, and those students are still on campus today. We treat them as our own. So those students have been, while the majority of the students went home and are learning digitally, the rest of the students remained here on campus, following all both the local, the state, and the national guidance from the CDC on COVID protection and COVID social distancing. Obviously, we follow all the rules and laws and executive orders that are issued from the national government, from the state government, and from the county government. So right now, you'll see that if kids are having their brunch right now in the dining facility, they're sitting 2 cadets to a table at the end of a 10-foot table. Our food service here is run by somebody called Flick. They're under the Compass Group. They're a subsidiary of the Compass Group, which is the largest food provider in the world. Those menus are balanced by a nutritionist. And so they have a breakfast like you would have: eggs, cereals, pancakes, biscuits, and so on. The meals vary 7 days a week. They're served 3 hot meals a day, Monday through Friday. And on Saturday and Sunday, they enjoy a brunch because they want to sleep in, and a hot dinner. But the brunch is hot and the dinner is hot as well. On the weekends, they have access to snack machines or any of the care packages that you may send in. Interestingly, on those care packages and on the U.S. mail, as an example, everything right now coming into this campus comes through a single location. We screen the cadets twice a day, temperature-wise and for their general health. We have an infirmary on campus. That infirmary has multiple licensed nurses, certified nurses who are on the campus. We also have a on-call physician who spends 2 mornings a week here. It's now 3 mornings a week here. We have a physician who's been with us for about 20 years now. He has his own practice locally, about 1.5 miles from here. But he's here 3 mornings a week for sick call, but he's on call for any other emergencies that we may have. We have a hospital that's less than 2 miles away. It's Northeast Medical Center. We also have a fire department / rescue unit that's also less than 2 minutes away for transport. So we have a medical infirmary on campus. We have a doctor 3 mornings a week here on campus. The nurses are 24/7 availability. Several of them live on the campus. Approximately 46 or so of our staff, faculty live on campus in apartments or separate homes that are physically on the campus. So we have that availability of 24/7 infirmary care. Any event that a student, and this has happened in the past, a stomach flu hits, the normal winter flu hits, students are taken to the infirmary and they're isolated. If it's a severe case that requires hospitalization, they are transported to the local hospital. If not, they are isolated in our infirmary. We have 18 beds in that infirmary. And if they are in the infirmary in isolation, then one of the nurses, infirmary staff stay with them through the night and monitor their progress through the evening. Also, if we have a stomach flu that's different than a influenza flu, they can be separated into different rooms within that infirmary. Our plans for COVID-19 are that if we do have a case, we would isolate that student in the infirmary. If we have several cases, we'll actually have a wing that we're going to be standing up within the barracks that is being held empty for the coming year, that we can take a wing and isolate it, because we may have a stomach flu, we may have the normal flu, and we may have a COVID-19 type flu going on, and you wouldn't want to have them all mixed together in the same location. So we will have the capability of separating those out. If it came to the point that we were overwhelmed, at that point we would transition to digital learning. And if the state or federal government, even before we had an outbreak, directed that we would have to close, as did happen, we closed before the governor's order to close all schools occurred. But if we were safe and secure, but the governor ordered us to close, then we would have to go ahead and move to digital learning as well. And the dean will talk about that in a few minutes. So when your care packages are coming in now to the students who are currently here, or any mail, it's delivered to a separate and single point on the campus. It's kept separate for over 24 hours before we touch it, for the same idea of protecting and limiting what's going on. There's a lot of virus, as you may have heard on national television. There's a lot of virus in the state of Georgia. And I'm proud to say we had one case in the last 8 weeks. That person had no contact with cadets. They were isolated, stayed home. They recovered, were cleared by medical personnel, and they're back at work, again, not in contact with cadets. So to be in a state that has it and to go this long of a period of time without having any cases except the one, which was not a student and was not in contact with student, I think stands as tribute and evidence that it's not just words. The practices and procedures that we're following. We have a team that comes in several days a week, just like the airplanes, with the misters that decontaminate the offices, hallways, and bathrooms. Even before the virus, we have professional teams that come in and use sprays in the bathrooms and showers that decontaminate for the normal during the year. But when COVID came along, we upped that with an additional cleaning and additional sprayings that are going on multiple times during the week. When they come back, we're going to be increasing those to an even higher number. One of the challenges that we have is that we have, we're a barracks environment, 2 to a room. So we have to stay ahead of viruses. And that's why, like I said, a stomach flu alone will cause us to isolate a student, because you don't want things to spread quickly through a barracks living environment. So we follow the guidelines. We're proactive in all of this. We have the protective gear. We actually started ordering this long before we started our stockpiles in February. We had enough food on hand for 4 months if, in fact, we had to shut down and be isolated from the rest of the community. We had stockpiled food, protective equipment, and disinfecting supplies so that we can continue our mission. That's part of the military model, is that so many of us are former military officers, NCOs, and enlisted, that we know that protecting the force is key, taking care of each other, and preparing ahead of time in a proactive fashion rather than a reactive fashion. How will that look in August? Well, if any of you out there can tell me exactly what the state of the virus will be in August, what the state of the vaccine will be, what the state of cures will be, I can give you an answer. If you can tell me what the governmental regulations and CD recommendations will be even 2 weeks from now, I'd be happy to know that. These things change on a daily basis, and we comply with those. Our plan is to stick with whatever the recommendations are and best practices are. If at that time it requires social distancing, that we go to one to a room, and if that's a requirement, then that's what we'll wind up doing. It may then limit the number of students who could be here. So keep in mind, it will be on a first come, first served basis, the admissions and the signing of your contract. So if you are interested in considering doing this, I suggest you make your decisions early, because we will comply with all regulations dealing with COVID-19, social distancing, medical procedures, and so on. So that takes care of, I hope, a lot of the questions. You could ask more at the bottom if we get to them towards the end. What are our plans for students who cannot handle digital or virtual learning? If many of you feel that your children can't handle that, part of the reason might be because you're having challenges right now with your student academically and paying attention or participating as they're supposed to. So I'm going to turn this over to the dean here to talk a little bit about how our digital learning is different, how the Commandant's Office holds students accountable. I had a great call. It was about 10 days ago. I got a phone call from a parent who was in thanks. She was from the Midwest, and she said that, Colonel Prochaski, I just wanted to call and provide some feedback and praise to the Commandant and the academic side of the house. I left for work this morning and left my sole child, my son, ensured that he logged on for digital learning for that day. And I left the house and started driving to work. 20 minutes later, my phone rang because it was the Commandant's office saying my son just logged off and left the computer screen. And so I turned my car around and had a little chat with my son, and I haven't had a call since. And in fact, that son has stayed planted in front of the screen, interacting with the teacher as appropriate. So just 20 minutes after the student disengaged, the phone rang. The student gets the first notice, and then the parent gets the second if the student isn't right back in front of the screen. So with that as a prelude to evidence that we do what we say we're going to do, I turn it over to the dean for a few moments.
Thank you. So honestly, to sum up in one word, part of what makes Riverside work, it's accountability. And when we talk about academics, it's not just about the teachers who are teaching. It is, as the president just indicated, the fact that on the Commandant side of the house, we have TACs, teacher advisor counselors, who play a very important role in the barracks, but also play a role in the academic side of the world. They are with us in the hallways when we're here during a typical school year, bringing the cadets over in the morning or when they come back from lunch. And they have transitioned into a similar role digitally. So digital for us looks a bit different from many public schools. In a lot of schools, students get a packet of work that they need to work on. They may hop on a session to interact with a teacher, or they may work independently. When we knew we had to transition to digital learning, our main thought was we need to keep our world as stable as we can for our cadets. They're used to a world of structure. They're used to knowing what the pattern of their days are going to be. So we replicated that in the digital world. All of our cadets have been required. We're almost done. We finished our last day of classes yesterday, but they've been required to log on every day for classes, each class session, same as it would have been when they were here on campus. They had to log on and be live with that teacher. They were required, for the most part, to show their screens, to verbally participate. We, of course, since we have cadets from around the world, some of our cadets did not participate in live sessions because of the time zone difference. And then we had a few cadets here who were more local, who had some challenges with technology. And of course, that's one thing we want to be sensitive to, is that not everybody has the same access to technology at home. So we developed workarounds for those. But for the most part, what you would see on a daily basis is that when it's time for first period English, the cadet is expected to be logged on time, that we have an accountability system that we use when cadets are here on campus, where teachers send off a quick email that goes out to the TACs to say, hey, so-and-so's not here. And then when we're here on campus, TACs are checking to see, is someone just a little bit delayed in the hallway? What's going on with that? And now that we've been in digital world, they are, as the president said, they pick up the phone, they make that phone call. Hey, where are you? They send emails. And then the second point of contact is they reach out to parents. We have tried to be very sensitive to the fact that many of our parents have also been at home working. And so we've tried hard to try to handle making sure we have everybody where we need them to be without parent intervention. But we know our parents want to know if something's arise. So we've made sure that that's in place. How have our teachers prepared for this? When we knew that we were going to transition from being on campus to digital learning, we took a week off from school. We spent that week preparing teachers to take what they do in a live environment and transition over to the digital world. As the president indicated, we've been using Zoom as our platform for our face-to-face, if you will, interaction with cadets. And then we've also used Google Classroom as a place where all of their classroom documents live and where cadets would submit work. We're a little bit different from other schools in that we also capture grades on a weekly basis. And by doing that, we're able to have, again, that accountability that tells us if our cadets are on track with the work they're supposed to be doing. We use that same system, whether we're here in person or whether we're digital. Parents are able to see weekly progress for cadets. And that has not changed at all with us having transitioned to the digital world. But as I said a moment ago, we spent intentional time with our teachers exploring how to use our two platforms, and then also what digital tools were available for each individual content area that could enhance and enrich their learning experience. So for our cadets, learning has looked much the same. Now, over the course of our 10 weeks, we made a few adjustments because after all, we had never done digital instruction before. So we adjusted our schedule to make sure that we were meeting the needs of our cadets. And as I said a moment ago, we just finished the last day of classes yesterday. We have finals next week. And again, finals are being handled in the schedule of their classes. So we feel like we've been able to provide our cadets with a rich learning experience that has simulated their normal environment.
Interesting there as well is that when we closed back in March, many parents started sending me notes from their state or from their county where when their school closed, they declared the school year over, or they declared that they're just going to graduate with whatever grades they had up until that point. We rejected that. And one of the main reasons we rejected that is because both Kathy and I, Dean Moore and myself, have been at the collegiate level. And when a student walks through the door as a freshman, we're expecting a certain level of knowledge. They're not excused from that knowledge because their school system closed early. The professor is not going to wait for them to catch up with all the other schools who maintain the standard. So we determined that we were going to maintain the standard all the way through to the end of the academic year, and that the learning that colleges are expecting them to have when they go off to school will in fact be present. Along those lines, a question came in about accreditation. We are accredited by the same accreditation programs that the public schools are, and that's SACS and SAIS. They accredited us, and with visits, they actually come to the campus for the visit. We're recertified every 5 years. We've always been accredited. We have never lost accreditation, and we are not on any or under any warnings or programs whatsoever. So question 2 was about teaching credentials. All of our teachers meet all of the requirements that are present for the discipline that they teach and are required by accreditation. That's one of the things that an accrediting body does, is to ensure that the teachers who are in front of our students meet the requirements for accreditation or certification, that they have the knowledge and abilities to, in fact, conduct the academic program and the coursework that they are responsible for. I'm going to turn to the Commandant. There's some questions here about what does physical fitness look like and physical activity for cadets on a typical day?
Yes, sir. It's a very physical environment. You can imagine in the military model of education that I spoke of earlier. That's a key component to who we are. So we encourage as many cadets to join sports programs as possible. If they do not enter a sports program, they go into what's called GSA, which is General Sports and Athletics. And then we'll meet after school and do some basic calisthenics, some warm-up exercises, push-ups, sit-ups, jumping jacks, those kind of things. And then as soon as we complete that, we'll spend probably 15, 20 minutes doing that. And then once that's complete, we will break out into sections. They'll play pickup games of basketball. We have 2 courts, a fantastic court outside and fantastic facilities inside. We've got a volleyball court outside as well. It's regulation size. We've got soccer fields, football fields. So depending on what the cadets want to play that day, we'll try and move in the direction of what they desire. And then, of course, we have PE as a accredited class every day. So there's a lot of physical activity. We have 2 weight rooms on campus that we open up for the boys. Very physical environment. And on top of that, it's just it's part of our method of correction. We're a very manly environment. We have a chain of command. We expect the boys to abide by the chain of command. If a cadet needs a redirection of some kind, then he may be put down to do 15, 20 push-ups. We expect cadets to not immediately, but get to the point where they can do push-ups without issue, that it's just a point of correction. It's understood and they move on. So there's a lot of physicality to the campus and a lot of opportunities for boys to develop.
What time, Monday through Friday, when they're in residence, what's a typical time for wake up and what's a typical time for lights out?
So wake up in the morning is generally 6:15 in the morning and then 2200 or 10 o'clock at night.
So they're getting a full night's sleep. And when it's quiet time, when it's lights out, it's quiet time. There's one of the TACs, teacher advisor counselors, are present in the wings in which the boys sleep. And we have a robust camera system as well. So should they come out of the room, motion sensors will immediately alert and let either the security people or the TAC officer know that somebody's out moving about. It's kept quiet. There are mandatory study periods where it's also quiet. But also, if a student is performing well, they can enter into the President's Club where they get a lot more privileges. They could study in their room rather than study halls or under being supervised. They can go over to the Goomba Grill and grab a burger and some fries or some chicken fingers. And so we reward excellent behavior and great academic performance. And we also hold them to a standards with restrictions when they are not complying in those areas.
If I can add
Sure.
on to that one piece, sir. Another key component of the night TAC officers, there's a lot of communication between the teachers and the TAC officers, and that's very important in managing their cadet life. If a cadet is nodding off in class, if he's not paying attention, teachers will send notes to TACs at night. So it's not just if the cadet comes out of his room. If a cadet is staying up after hours and he's exhausted the next day, teachers will cue us into that, and then we'll check on them and then make sure that they are in fact going to bed and getting their 8 hours of sleep.
As I said, remember that many of the faculty and staff live on campus. I live on campus. I walk here from my back door in about 4 minutes. The Commandant lives on campus. Many of the nurses live on campus. So this is a 24/7 operation, and we have security 24/7 as well. And as I said, we just invested about $250,000 in a new camera system that has 169 different views of the campus hallways, stairwells. Of course, none are in the showers and none are in the individual bathrooms or bedrooms of where the boys sleep, but all the doors in and out are, in fact, covered. Do you track your graduates to know how many complete college and how many complete college after they graduate if they enter? We track how many go off to college. We do not have a means other than if they let us know, and we'll publish it in the Reveille magazine, how our kids are doing in college, but not all of them are in contact with us. Remember that they come from 21 countries and 27 states, so we don't have a way of tracking them after they go to college, whether they completed. But, at the college level, we know, and I've been head of admissions on a college campus. Dean Moore has been head of admissions on a college campus. We know the reputations of schools. And so if we're admitting kids from a campus that the students are not completing and are dropping out at a high rate, we wouldn't be admitting those students in the future, or from that school in the future. I'm proud to say, and quick question here for our Vice President for Enrollment Management, do we publish anywhere online where the schools are the kids are accepted for the current year?
We do in the materials that we send to you via physical mail. We have those available, and I think we have it in digital form too. I'm not sure if it's posted on the website, but it can be.
Okay, let's get that published since this was a question that was asked. You'll see if we're going to Ivy League schools, the finest schools in the country, the academies, and so on. So come to Riverside. We are accredited, and our SAT scores and grades are getting these kids into the best schools in the country with millions of dollars in scholarships. What do we do with the boys on a weekend, especially the boys who tend to be, quote, non-joiners?
Yes, sir. Well, there's a distinction between our weekends. We have what we call open and closed weekends. And on closed weekends, it's a very robust weekend. It means that there's a lot going on. It could be the military ball weekend. It could be the president's inspection weekend. And you can imagine with that many boys on campus that you need a structured day. And that goes, when we have those closed weekends, that goes to a 3-meal a day week or weekend. And so those are, like I said, managed from beginning to the end. On an open weekend, we try and balance between what we think is best for the cadets and also appreciate the fact that they've worked hard all week. That is a fact. We keep them busy all week. Part of our motto is tired boy is a good boy. And we found that to be true. So we have to be understanding about what they encounter on the weekend. At the same time, we want them to get out and do some things, but we don't want to continue to exhaust them through the week because on the counterpart, the boys that are taking advantage of the open weekend, it's very unstructured. And we still have expectations for academics. If they're on the failure report or something like that, they have 2 points of instructions on the weekend. If they've been conduct issues during the week, we address those on the weekends through guard path as well. So there's some mandatory fun and then some flexible time for the boys.
Yeah, keep this in mind. Every minute, Monday through Friday, is scheduled for them, and they are accounted for with multiple points throughout, checking that they're physically present. You don't want somebody wandering off and those kinds of things either. And so Monday through Friday, they're tired. They beg for, can we sleep in on a weekend, which is why we moved to a brunch so they can get some extra sleep. But not all of them are allowed to get the extra sleep if, in fact, from a discipline point of view, they need to have some additional instruction, or if they need additional academic instruction in a supervised fashion, that'll occur as well. Let's see what else we have here. We talked a little bit about how do we have self-discipline if they're in a remote learning situation. The answer is they are in full intent right now is to start the year on campus in accordance again with all of the restrictions. We'll get them up to speed. The dean is indicating that they'll likely learn a couple of days early in the semester. They will have digital learning occurring here on campus for the purpose of making sure they know how the technology works and what the expectations are. At the same time, the technology, because it is now in such demand across the country, I hope you bought some stock in those companies. It's in such demand that they are upgrading the capabilities and quality of the programming that's available through these online platforms. So we need to keep our teachers cutting edge, our technologists cutting edge, we also have to keep our students cutting edge and being able to learn and use that technology. And so then, with every hope, we're going to do the entire year on campus as planned. But in the event that we can't and we go to digital, they'll have had experience with that digital learning here. They'll have experience with what the standards and expectations and discipline systems are, and then we'll transition that to the home front. If we do wind up going digital and going home, they may be home for a month, they may be home for 2 months, they may turn around and come right back to campus. And we could talk about refund policies here in a bit about how that all works. So next question was, how does the fee structure work? You are going to be asked to sign a contract. I can't say this more clearly than read your contract carefully before you sign it, because it is a contract between you and us. Just like we have contracts with our food service people, with our laundry, with our people who mow the lawns, and with our faculty. They expect that the contract will be held. So once you sign that contract, you are bound to us. If you change your mind halfway through, you're still bound by that contract, and there is not a refund. If your student brings drugs to the campus and tries to sell those drugs or something like that, your student will immediately be removed from the campus, and there is not a refund. That's the rare situation where a student has to go home because of behavior. But we do a whole lot of warnings and a whole lot of adjustments before we get to the point of sending your young man home. There's a couple of things I don't tolerate at all. I have, as in zero tolerance, and that's the distribution of any illegal substances, any type of racial hatred type activity that goes on throughout America. We will not tolerate that at all. Zero tolerance. And bullying. If your student engages in bullying on another student, they're going home, and there will be no refund. But we have programs to monitor and develop them to avoid those situations, and so that is a very rare occurrence on campus. But what we don't have control over is what the COVID virus may do, how the pharmaceutical healthcare industry may react to it to mitigate it, or how government officials may react to the outbreak. Can't control those. In the past, that was still on you, meaning there was no refund. However, for the coming year, recognizing this is a very difficult decision for you and an awful lot of money at risk for you, we have developed a refund program based upon how much instruction is completed in a month. So in the event that we only get through a month of instruction and we have to transition to digital learning, there will be a refund so long as your account's current and adjusted for any financial aid you may be receiving. There will be a refund back to you. There will be a table attached to the contract that will explicitly tell you how much money you will receive under what conditions. And so we've now shared all of the risk with you and with us, because when they do transition to digital learning, faculty still have to be paid. We still have to have a finance office. We still have to have information technology personnel. We still have to have some tactical officers who make the phone calls that are keeping your kids engaged online. We still have to have all of our other operations, but some costs can be avoided. And we have rewritten our contracts with our vendors that also account for if we have to close and transition, and also what would happen if we then come back to campus. Obviously, your costs would go back up again once we return to campus. So read the policy, read the refund policy, read your contract carefully. I can't tell you how many parents say, well, I thought if my kid didn't like it, he could just come home and I'm going to get a complete refund. Read your policy. It has stood well by us for 100 and something years now. It's held up well in the courts. But on the same token, it's rare that we have to get to that situation. We're not in the business of taking your money. We're in the business of developing young men into young children, actually, and developing them to find young men who are going off to college at a very high rate and becoming productive members of our society. One of the questions was, too, what are some of the aspects, what kind of quality of graduates, how do they do later on in life? I can tell you that I know many millionaires who are graduates from this academy because they are now giving back funds to this academy. They hold positions in government. They have their own businesses. They tend to be very, very productive entrepreneurs. They learn how to care for themselves. If you think about successful entrepreneurs, if you see them on televisions or read their biographies, one of the things they are always talking about is the self-discipline it takes to be an entrepreneur, to get your own company started, and what it takes to be self-disciplined to go through college. And they give their credit back to here, not just in words, but they give it back as alumni who donate back in terms of millions of dollars that come back to this campus. So that covers that question, I hope. Is there a way for current students to connect with my son? Is there a way for current students at Riverside to connect with my son? And the answer is yes. All you have to do is contact your admissions officer, and we will link up a current cadet with your son so that they can talk about, and they'll talk frankly about it. We tend to see that the parents are more concerned and afraid than the students are after they talk to the students. It is a process. If you think about it, it is the military process, and there are millions of people in uniform throughout our country. There are hundreds of thousands who have gone through the military academies. It works. It's always a little bit strange in the beginning. It was strange when I went off to basic training, but you come out the other end of that as a very different person, and hopefully with the success and self-discipline it takes to be successful through all aspects of your life. When will on-site tours be offered? That's going to depend on state, county, and national policies under the COVID. We're not having them right now because we want to protect the students who are on campus. Those students will be leaving later this week, and we're going to work with health officials to see if we can begin running limited tours. But we do have virtual tours that are online right now. If you have specific questions, let us know. If you'd like to visit the campus, you will be screened before you're allowed to come onto the campus. And you'll be asked some questions before we'll let you onto our campus, because I've also got to protect the employees of the campus as well. Normally during the summer, we have about 3,000 to 3,500 students who are not Riverside students who come to camps here and so on. They live in our barracks. We've canceled all of those. 100% of those were canceled for this summer because I do not want to have all of those people coming from who knows what backgrounds into our barracks where your students would be living. So we've canceled all of our summer programs. We're spending that time to thoroughly clean and disinfect and repair any issues that are in all of our barracks. So they'll be stepping into, when your students arrive, a clean and healthy environment. We will have screening before your student is allowed to become part of the entire core and whole. We're counting on testing being available as it's starting to become available a little bit more prolifically across the country. And if a student is going to be positive upon arrival, we'll have isolation capability at that time. If we don't, your student will not be allowed to come to campus, and in all likelihood, we will not open the campus. What precautions are in place to ensure my son will be safe from bullying, hazing in showers, barracks, and so on? Again, you have a cadet chain of command where cadet leaders are responsible for taking care of one another, and they take that very, very seriously. That's why they come back in big numbers for reunions. They become part of a brotherhood, become part of a class. I can tell you, I've gone to multiple colleges. I've run colleges. I've been at high schools. I've never seen the tightness. The people are more affiliated here with the reunion and provide their funding back here to Riverside philanthropically as gifts than they do to the colleges they graduated. They're tight with their brothers, and they take care of one another. We also, as I said, have cameras in the hallways, stairwells, common areas, swimming pools, courts, and so on, as well as adult supervision. Can I guarantee you that your student will not be bullied? And the answer is, of course I can. Just as your student right now could be bullied when he walks down the street. If a random act happens like that, then we report it as per law. If there is any act of bullying anywhere on campus, we report it to state officials or law enforcement officials. It is a requirement by the law in the state of Georgia, so it is not hidden. There are students who, if they do something that causes physical harm and we report it, the police have arrested a student for bullying. We take it seriously. It's rare, but if it does occur, the student is discharged, and the student that remains is cared for to ensure that we keep it at an absolute minimum if it occurs. But if you know of a school in the country that doesn't have it, look at the finest and most expensive private boarding schools in the country and type those words in, and you'll find that they've had cases, and it's happening in the public schools all the time. I will tell you that we have better controls in place than any of the schools I think that you'll be able to mention. Do you perform drug tests, and how often? A nicotine test? And the answer is yes. Upon arrival, your student will be tested, and randomly throughout the year, they are tested. If they're positive when they come in, we watch them closer and they have more testing. If they're negative and we do the random testing and they stay clean, then the testing isn't as frequent. But those who test positive are watched much more closely. We do inspect when a student comes back from vacation or from a weekend away. We do inspect their bag. We do inspect their person. We do inspect the rooms. We have random, unannounced inspections of rooms and personal gear. Is there anything to add to that coming up?
On top of that, it's hard to keep a secret around here, given the fact that we're living in close quarters to each other. So whenever any intelligence that comes to us that tips us off that somebody might be in possession of or using, we pursue those things pretty heavily. So I have TAC officers going through an entire company at least once a week. We'll just pick companies at random, go through everything that the cadets have respectfully. And then again, if we believe that they've got it on their person, we may even go to the classroom and challenge them. So we're very vigilant about this. I don't know of any other academy or any other school system out there that is as vigilant in the pursuit of keeping drugs and nicotine off campus than we do. Are we perfect? No institution is, but we go above and beyond in that regard.
Along those same lines, if a student gets tested and comes up positive, they get 2 strikes basically. If they come in with it, it's not a strike. That's the baseline. We know who they are. We keep a closer eye on them. If they come in clean, but somewhere during the year they test positive, that's strike 1, and they go into a program, and it's got a heavy physical aspect to it, as you might imagine, that causes quite a bit of discouragement for them doing it again. If they have it a second time, they are dismissed, and because I can't have that happening on our campus. The other thing you mentioned is it's a very close environment. I can't stress that enough. So many times, the students who are here actually don't want the drugs to be here. Athletes don't want any type of drug to be near them. They'll often tell us, you may want to go look in Smitty's locker room or closet because he got some. Well, he came back with some. They will actually let us know, and then we'll go pay, because they don't want it here either. We also had some intelligence that came in this past year where some boys had ordered in the evening some pizza or sandwiches, and they'll have a driver who, in addition to your hamburger, there's a vape device in there. And so when we found out about those, we shut those deliveries off completely, and we inspected the what's under the pizza when the pizza comes. So we're keeping a vigilant eye on that because, again, zero tolerance for that. Are students able to bring personal items like laptops and cell phones to the academy? Cell phones, yes, but there are strict controls on the cell phones. They can't have them during the day. They have to sign them out for a certain period of time, then they sign them in the evenings. They're accounted for. We do not allow them to bring personal laptops. We will issue them Chromebooks when they're here. And those Chromebooks have safeguards on them that limit what sites they can go to. So they can't get to pornographic sites. They can't get to drug sites. They can't get to bomb building sites. They can't get to sites that you wouldn't want them on at any point. So no, they cannot have, they have access to email though, when they have their computers. So you can communicate with them via email. And when they do have their cell phones, when they're allowed, which by the way is a privilege, it is not a right. When they have their cell phone, you can call, chat with them. Those who can't afford cell phones, each of the barracks has a landline that they can call out to you during specified hours during the evening that you can communicate in on weekends.
Sir, could I add one thing to
Sure.
that? With the Chromebooks, we also have software on the Chromebooks that monitors what they're looking at on the internet. So that's just yet another safeguard so that we know that we're able to keep them safe. And if there is something that pops up, that alert goes out to the commandant's side of the house as well as to me.
And cadets get interesting. They will find a way to get a burner phone snuck in, like you'd see on TV, snuck underneath a pizza. We get hold of them. Might take us a week, but we get hold of it. Anticipated date to open the campus. Yes, our anticipated date is a report date of July 25th with classes started on July 28th. In this environment, I assume one of the most key things that you want from all of this is your son to graduate with a diploma from high school, an accredited diploma from high school. As such, we're starting early because if there's an event that happens where there's a blow up of the virus or a new virus or something else that happens governmentally in November or December, we want to get as many days of classes in to meet the accreditation requirements. There's a certain number of minutes that you're supposed to have contact with a faculty member for a certain number of days in order to maintain accreditation. So we're going to get them in here earlier than we normally would. We normally start in August. We're starting in July. And we normally have several days, almost a week, for them to get acclimated and learn how to march. And so we're going to get them right into a classroom, and we're going to handle those in the afternoon periods and on weekends. So the first several weekends, you can anticipate being closed weekends where your son is not coming home and you're not coming to visit, as we try to get as much education done as we can while also acclimating them and getting them militarily proficient and self-discipline started. Are extracurricular activities mandatory or elective? And the answer is it depends. We participate in the Veterans Parade. If the Veterans Parade is held this year and if it's safe for us to go, then it's mandatory for them to be there that weekend to participate in that parade. If the band is traveling, as we did for the Chicago Thanksgiving Parade or the Mardi Gras Parade in New Orleans, and they're in the band, then that's part of a mandatory extracurricular activity for them. And so if it's purely optional extracurricular, no, they don't have to participate. If it's mandatory fun, then yes, they do have to participate. But they will have to participate in physical activity. Physical activity is required for every boy routinely here. Sound mind, sound body, also tired boy, less other activities that we don't want to have happening. So
If I could add to that just a little bit.
Sure.
You know, there are a fraction of the Corps or the boys who, if left to their own devices on a weekend, they would stay up in the barracks in their room on their devices and not engage that much. What we find is when we have some level of mandatory fun is that once they get out there and engaged, I wish I could just take pictures and send back to them and to you all because they have fun that they didn't expect to, but they do have fun. And we don't make it an all-day thing, but we do want them to engage and not isolate themselves away from everybody else.
And I can give you days, and we can write books about funny stories that are here. But we had one last spring where a parent called. My son hates it. He's threatening to harm himself, which, by the way, we have protocols for that as well. But he's threatening to harm himself. He hates it here. He can't stand it. He's crying all the time. And so we sent the mom a picture that was taken 5 minutes later of him on a roller coaster because we had him on a trip, smiling and laughing. We took a picture of him in the dining facility, smiling and laughing. So it's one thing, they're calling you to lay the guilt trip on it, and we're monitoring and taking pictures and sending them, and you're going to say to yourself, how is this boy crying and cannot stand it anymore, yet they're laughing and joking and having fun at the activities that are here. So we've been doing this for over 100 years. All right, you'll see, and you'll be able to talk to other parents. There is a parents club. Something else I wanted to point out too. When I was president of the college at both universities where I was president, every single student and every single parent was given my personal cell phone number, not my work phone. So at that time when I was president, over 30,000 people had this phone number that they can call me 24/7. Luckily, the vast majority of them didn't, but they would call me if they had a problem or a question, and I would answer it. So I had a phone call last Saturday night at 10 p.m. from a parent who was asking me a question. I'll take that phone call. If I'm in a meeting, it'll go to voicemail, and I'll get back to you as quickly as I can, or you can text me. And so often I'll answer during a meeting. I'll answer a text that comes in. You'll have access to me 24/7 unless I'm up in the air on a plane, which doesn't look like anything I'm planning on doing for the next year or so, given the conditions that are out there. But you'll have access to me 24/7 in that fashion. You'll get my phone number. My son is known for being unruly. What disciplinary actions do you take with the unruly students? Well, first off, if they have a history of violence or something like that, that's in the record, they're not going to be here as a student. I can't take that risk. It's an insurance risk. I'm not taking those. But if they're generally unruly, they disrupt classes and so on, we have a demerit system. Merits get you privileges. Demerits have things like your cell phone taken away, access to fun activities taken away, access to the snack machines, access to the grill, all those other, we start removing those. And by the way, it puts peer pressure on them because their cadet chain of command is also held responsible for your son's behavior. So the TAC officers, the faculty, the staff walking down the hallway, if a student passes a staff member and doesn't give them a proper greeting, there are repercussions for that. They're called out on it quickly. Let me turn that around to another way, though. He mentioned the military ball, which is an extracurricular activity. It is a pure joy when you have the military ball, which we had to cancel this year because of social distancing. But young women from the local high schools and stuff get dressed up in their best gowns, and they're paired up, and the cadets are taught how to escort properly. It is a delight to be at the military ball and watch these young ladies being escorted by a young man in uniform who pulls out the chair, waits for the young lady to eat. When a young lady wants to use the powder facilities, the young man stands up, pulls out the chair. I mean, it's just remarkable. And you'll hear this from parents who say, after just 4 or 5 weeks, saying, my son actually looks me in the eye when he responds, answers my questions, calls me ma'am, and so on. And when they're home on the weekends, we ask you to partner with us when they are home, that you get them up at the same time, that you continue this discipline. One of the worst things is that the kid holds his nose for 5 days while he's here participating in the program and all the discipline. And then they get home on the weekend, and because you're feeling guilty about sending them here, you let them sleep in, you let them talk back to you, you let them go out with the wrong crowd. We ask you partner with us. We're in this together to produce a young man of character who's heading off to college or into service in some way that you can be proud of. So
I can add a little bit to that, sir.
Please.
What I've learned over the number of years that I've been here is that it's hard to replicate, or at least initiate, what we do here at home. So when the boys are placed in an environment where there's an abundance of compliance going on across all aspects of their life, they're kind of put in the middle of all that. And at the same time, we do so many things during the day, just like our pass and review, where they're held to a high degree of accountability and redirection. Boys need to receive direction and respond to that on a routine basis. If they get away from that, then they become unruly. They become independent. They begin to think that they have a higher level of understanding and wisdom than those around them. So getting them to be okay with that on a routine basis goes a long way.
Next question is, do we know activities that are canceled for next year? And the answer is yes. Just yesterday, 2 days ago, we announced that we're canceling the fall sports season. Georgia High School Association, which governs interscholastic sports for the entire state of Georgia, public and private schools, they have put a restriction banning indefinitely interscholastic athletics with no accounting at all. We're in contact with them weekly. They do not know when that ban is going to be lifted. So in order to be proactive and stand up our sports programs for the fall internally, we've made a decision so that you can make a decision whether you want your students to come here or not. The fall sports are canceled. We're currently planning on winter and spring sports, but those too may be canceled, depending. External ones where we have competitions with other schools may be canceled as well, depending upon what's going on with the virus. And again, what state, local, and national health officials are either governing or advising. Again, that's in the interest of safety and health of your student. That doesn't change the fact that we will have those activities going on campus here, unless those too are somehow banned by health officials. If they're not banned, we'll be having them here because we're in a controlled environment. Do we have IEP? Dean, can you address that?
Absolutely. So as part of our admission process, we review applicants where there's an IEP or a 504 plan in place. We want to make sure that before we admit your son, that we are able to accommodate what the needs might be. Assuming that we believe we can, we do have a student success center here on campus. We have learning specialists who work with our cadets to help with executive functioning, to provide extra tutoring. We also have support tutors from the outside that can be contracted on an individual basis as well.
Keep in mind, you need to be as forthright as possible on your application. If they have a learning disability, we need to know about that learning disability on the application, because and then we can determine whether we can meet those, whether we have the capability of meeting those requirements. We also have physical and health restrictions on admissions as well. If you do not reveal those to us and you get the student admitted and then declare them, that will have been a fraudulent admissions, and your contract will just be enforced. The student will be here and the contract will still be enforced. You're best working with us. You do not want to send a student here who we know cannot be successful here. It's in your interest not to do so. It's in our interest not to do so. So be forthright. If you have questions, ask your counselor. But there are mental health, physical health, as well as what limitations on what we can do with IEPs. So be forthright and complete, and we'll go from there. It's not uncommon, especially at the collegiate level, where students are leaving an environment where they had an IEP and now they want to try it on their own and not declare it. Then they get into the environment and they're right back where they were, and we get through the whole semester and the student fails everything, and the parent says, well, he really needed an IEP. We were just going to try without it. Please erase all of his grades and start all over. We can't. Once a student's enrolled, whatever grades are there become part of his academic record, which becomes part of his permanent academic record. So just be truthful and open. We'll work with you, but you want your student to be successful, and we want them to be successful as well. I have an upper grade student enrolling in the 11th grade. That is a very common entrance point. It's one of our largest entrance points are 11th graders. What happens is they tried public schools or another school for 9th and 10th grade. They're not being successful. They're now knowing that they're going to have to and want to go to college. So a large number of our students come in 11th grade, and they spend 11th and 12th grade here. They acclimate just fine, and they do just fine on an individual basis. We have the programs for them. We talked already about what the cadets do on weekends and what that schedule is. They are in a uniform on the weekend, but it's not the uniform. The uniform on a weekend is frequently a certain set of colored academy shirt, shorts, and a prescribed set of shoes and socks. They don't get to just wear and do whatever they want on the weekends uniform-wise. We maintain discipline on the weekends. It's just a little bit more relaxing in the activities on the weekends. Anything to add to that, Commandant?
There are also offered activities that it's not mandatory, but we put some ideas out there that they can sign up for. So we encourage cadets to be as involved as possible. So they have some choice about what they can participate in most cases, with a little mandatory fund built in there.
How are medications handled? The nursing staff, the infirmary staff issues the medications at the meals. That is, the medications are pre-packaged from a certified pharmacy that have your student's name and the restrictions on that medication. At the mealtime, they report to the nurse who has the checklist to make sure that they're taking their medication. The student presents themselves to the health official, or if it's a nighttime medicine, they present themselves to the tactical officer. Is that correct?
In most cases, the nurse is available. The TACs work in conjunction with the nurses to make sure the boys are getting there on that timetable and that they are actually taking their medication.
And then they have them take it right in front of them. The student cannot even have Tylenol in their wall locker. All medications have to be administered through the infirmary and accounted for there. They have to take it in front of the individual, swish the water, lift their tongue to make sure that they're not then spitting it out or hiding the medication. So we've been doing that, and probably about 25% or so of the entire Corps do that at the various meals during the day. And again, it is regulated and it is recorded. Can you put boys with past issues, motivation, attitude, substance abuse with a student who might be more motivated and encouraging? The answer is there is as much a science as there is an intuitiveness and common sense. You have a commandant who's been here for 20 plus years. He knows who needs to be with whom. But you wouldn't put a brand new rock in with a senior. They're generally in with another rock or new recruit on campus. They're generally in with them so that they bond together as classmates, but they're monitored by the upper class as well as by the tactical officer.
If I can add a little bit, sir.
Sure.
Of course, we're really not interested in picking up students with drug problems, motivational problems. Those do exist. The whole system is built around motivating and inspiring young men. Where there's a high degree of competition amongst the companies, there's a high degree of accountability within the company. Your entire chain of command is built on supporting the students. Everybody that's holding a leadership position in the chain of command has 2 points of responsibility: helping and encouraging the cadets that they're in charge of, and holding them accountable. So it's just built into the system to inspire and motivate cadets to do their best and be competitive in nature.
There's some questions here about sports. The Georgia High School Association bans recruiting of athletes and stealing of athletes from other schools. Does it happen out there? Yeah, it hits the Atlanta Journal-Constitution whenever some coaches get caught doing that. We don't do that because that's what the rules say. If we're in a military environment, we follow the rules. How good is our basketball team? Our basketball team the last 2 years has gone to the regional championships. Last year, they got through to the finals of those regional championships. This year, they got through, I think, one round in it. So, yes, we do. Our football team has been doing well. We have athletes who are playing in the NFL. We have athletes who are recruited and get scholarships for college for different sports. So our programs are doing well. We're not the same as a Class 5 AAAAA. We don't have 4,000 students. And so we play at the division level that we're at. But athletes from here do get recruited and scholarships for the academies and for colleges on athletics. Does the recruit on campus cycle start before the academic year begins? Normally, yes. This year, no. It's going to be part of it because, again, we want to get started and into academics as quickly as possible so we can ensure that your students are on track for graduation and or for credit for the academic year completion. How many students are in a typical classroom and how many cadets are in each grade?
I would say we average 12 to 15 cadets in a class. And how many cadets are in each grade? Probably, it really depends each year on the group that's admitted. So I can't really offer you a normal number.
So this graduating senior class has about 80 or so in it. Last year it was 114 were in that graduating class. It varies based upon who can come here in a given year. The 7th grade is generally small, about 25 in the 7th grade, about 50 in the 8th grade. So there you're accounting for, that's 160 or so accounted for in 7th, 8th, and 12th grade. And we have about 400 on campus. So there was remaining 300 or so are spread across the other grades. So about 100 on this 9, 10, 11, and 12th grade, and a fewer number in the 7th and 8th grade. But 7th and 8th graders, they get a lot more supervision and a lot more eyes kept on them because some of them are pretty small. And it's amazing how many, we stopped issuing 2 pairs of shoes to a 7th and 8th grader because they come here in size 6, and by Christmas time they're in size 8, and by the time they're ready to go on to the next grade, they're in size 9 and 10. These kids have these growth spurts during those years that we have to keep an eye on. What are the tactics for a student who's academically smart but has no social skills and no self-discipline? Well, we've been talking about that throughout. The program is set up to develop that self-discipline. Myself, there's pictures of me back in high school where my hair was down to here. Next thing I knew, when I got an ROTC scholarship, my hair was shorter than it is now. There were more hair follicles than there are right now, but my hair was shorter than it was right now as I went off to basic training. Next thing I know, I'm jumping out of airplanes, which is something I never would have thought of, and rappelling out of helicopters. It's the military model takes you beyond anything you yourself thought were your physical, mental, and academic capabilities. That's what we do, and we do it well. Why is that model being brought into the high school level? Because it works so well for 17 and 18-year-olds in the Air Force, Army, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, and Merchant Marine Academy, and it's served this country well for over 200 years. We just took that model and added it into a purely academic environment, meaning a high school, and added this military component to it that is designed to develop social capabilities. Because if you're not going to be part of the brotherhood, and people do not. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You have to have a feeling of belonging. And so if you don't conform, you're not going to feel like you belong. If you don't feel like you belong, you have anxiety. People don't like anxiety, so what do? They engage. You teach self-discipline, you teach intellectual skills, and you prepare them for life. Again, it's worked for the military for centuries. It's worked here for over a century, or we'd be out of business. Do you have programs in place to deal with mental health issues? Yes, we do. We also have, like if a cadet reports self-harming, we immediately have them evaluated. We're required to by law. In some cases, they have to go home. In some cases, it's determined that it is just a call for help, and then they can get counseling. So we have programs for that, but we take that obviously very, very seriously because suicide is an issue across the country. That's why there are laws that require the screening and the reporting. We have programs for it, but in some cases, if it's severe, they will have to go home for treatments. In other cases, they have medical appointments where they will get transported for counseling sessions and the like. Is there anything to add on that?
Yes, sir. We do have some cadets who are under routine counseling anyway. So we do have counselors visit the campus through the infirmary, set up appointments with cadets, and we facilitate that down there. Also, if we determine that a cadet is in need of some counseling or that's a joint agreement between the parents and the academy, then we can facilitate that as well. So you'll be notified immediately in the event that there's any concern on our part, and then we'll work in conjunction with you to determine what is best for your son.
Do all of your instructors have a military background? Not all of the faculty do. Some do, but not all the faculty do. They're not there for that aspect. They're there for content and academic content and student development. The vast majority of the TAC officers do have it. Some are international experience from being in the British Navy or the British Army. So on the military side, generally, yes. The ROTC program, absolutely. They are all retired. They had to have a retired career to be teaching in the junior ROTC program, and some faculty do. The dean would like to talk for a moment about a new program we're offering this fall in aerospace engineering.
We're really excited about this new program. This is a program we'll be doing in conjunction with an agency in the state of Georgia for our cadets to complete a track in aerospace engineering. It will count as elective credit for their program, but this is a great program where they will have the opportunity to do hands-on building of models. They have to build rockets and planes. We will have a wind tunnel to test the dynamics of what they have built. And so we're very excited that program will start in the fall. I'd also like to mention, this is not academic credit, but it's another example of a club that our cadets can join, and that is our robotics club. So with robotics, they get the opportunity to build robots, and there are competitions around the state of Georgia it is intense and fascinating to watch. Riverside, for the last several years, has been a host site for that. We're not sure what the competitive part of robotics will be for the upcoming year, because we, of course, don't yet know what will be allowed in terms of where people can be with social distancing and whatnot. But it's a great opportunity for cadets to take the skills that they're learning in math and science and apply that to engineering and robotics.
We also have, when we talk about interscholastic athletics, esports is now a Georgia High School Association competitive statewide program. And we had it for the first time this year, and we were ranked #1 in the state in our esports. And you'll see that on electronic sports, meaning gaming. You'll see that does not meet their physical requirement. It does, though, get them into the competitive environment. And you can see that they'll have national championships on ESPN for esports at the collegiate level. I believe this past year, the winner as an individual level got a $2 million prize on esports. And so if you can catch a football, you can be a millionaire. And if you can do esports right, I guess you can also be a millionaire. But that does not take the replace of physical activity for those young men. So what kind of students are you looking for at Riverside? Students who do not even know their potential. Students who know, we have many students here who come to a single gender because they don't want to be distracted by women, because they have a goal of going to an academy, or they have a goal of being an engineer, and they know that young ladies can distract them. They know they want to be in an environment in which they're away from drugs, or parents know they want them in an environment where that is strictly controlled. So the answer is there is no ideal student. We have students who are on the top end academically and come in here with straight A's, and they leave here with straight A's and go off to the best schools in the country. We have students who don't know yet what they want to be and are trying to find themselves. We have student athletes who want to excel. I mean, we have the whole range. Is there a perfect student? And the answer is no. All of us can continue to improve. We make them self-aware when they get here. Any part of leadership, any solid leader that I've ever met has self-awareness. Many of these students don't have the self-awareness of how their behaviors or lack of discipline are affecting their life. It's just constantly, oh, woe is me, or everybody's unfair to me, and so on. And they don't look at how the environment, how they present themselves to the environment that create the environment that they're unhappy with. So no one type of student. The world is not made up of one type of an individual. Again, 21 countries and 27 states. I'm originally from up north, and I'll tell you, it was a cultural shock when I got down to the South. And so I'm learning from the South, and the South is learning from the North, and I'm learning from our international students, and we get invited to their homes internationally and so on. So the issue is that, is it a student who has the capability of being developed, whether they have the willingness or not? That's what we work on. And so leave it to us, leave it to our century plus, leave it to the decades of experience that we have here in this room alone, and the history of this institution. I think you'll be quite pleased. There's a couple that we're going to be winding this up and having some conclusions here. But the next steps in all of this are work with your admissions counselor. Please know we do have financial aid. If you say, oh my goodness, I can't possibly afford this, work with your admissions officer. We have financial aid in forms of scholarships that are available and discounts that are available. We have payment plans that are available. It runs the whole gamut. Approximately half of all of our families receive some form of financial aid. It's going to be based on the equivalent of the FAFSA. Your income tax records become part of this. Unless you're international, then there's other ways in which verification has to happen. If you're an international family watching this right now, you're going to need to answer a whole lot of medical questions, health issues, academic issues, discipline issues, and all of those. Just work with your admissions counselor. They can answer just about every one of these questions on here, except ones that we're like the new refund policy. We finally got that finalized, and through our lawyers, that will become available next week, and we'll be training up the admissions counselors on that aspect. Okay, so the issue here is that this is already mid-May, and we're going to be starting in July. If you think that you can walk in on July 24th and say, here I am, that's not going to happen because we're scaling up, and because of all the health issues and screenings and things we're doing, we need you to get your paperwork in early. Otherwise, your student will not be allowed to start on time, and they'll start behind the power curve. And you want them to have every opportunity for success. We'll work with you early. You'll be given my contact information Well, once you're admitted, you'll be given my contact information. If you're running into any difficulty with your admissions process, feel free to call the president's office. Feel free to call the vice president for enrollment management. But I have never had one of those phone calls in 18 months because the admissions counselors know what they're doing, and they're here to help you. Vice President Colonel Corbin, how do we wrap this up?
So these are always awkward. How do you start it? How do you end it? You can't see faces. I know that any good organization starts on time and ends on time, so that we can be mindful and respectful of your day. You're not, as the president indicated, you're going to have many more questions. I can already see them continuing to come in here. We have the best admissions staff in the United States, and they are very relational folks. They know what they're talking about. Many of them are parents of current cadets. They're alumni, and they will respond in kind. And we will, of course, make available those that have specific departmental responsibilities that may be able to answer them more appropriately. We thank you for your time. We thank you for your attention and for your participation throughout this. And we pray for your safety and your decision making as you move forward through this time. We're all doing the same. So God bless you. Be well. Go Eagles.
Go Eagles.
Go Eagles.